Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight for our fall recruiting for the class of 2021. We're going to hop pretty quickly into the Q&A, but first we're going to just touch base on a few things, a few housekeeping items, as well as some introductions. So, Matt, take it away.
Hey guys, thanks for being with us tonight. My name is Matt Sternberg. I run the business development for HeadFirst. I've actually been with the company for 5 years now, almost 6, and have helped thousands of student athletes like yourselves, younger, older, try to attempt to go on and play at the high academic level in both baseball and softball. Sports were always a really big part of what I did, part of the recruiting process, so it's nice to be able to come back and work with great families like you. So again, thanks for being here.
And I am Max McKenna. I'm our Senior Manager of Product Marketing here. I myself came up playing baseball, ended up playing baseball in college. I went to Amherst, where I graduated in 2011, played baseball for 4 years there, then went into teaching and coaching at the high school level, first at the Phillips Andover Academy up in Massachusetts, and then later at the Master's School, small private school outside New York City. Came back and rejoined the HeadFirst team full-time just about 5.5 years ago or so, and since then have worked with summer travel coaching, recruiting and advising, as well as obviously working with families like yours in terms of accessing their goals of playing baseball and softball at the next level at some of these top-tier academic schools.
And Max, before we go right into it, let's make sure we can we make sure everybody here knows how to ask a question. If they want to go ahead and do that, we can get started in case some things come in first.
Absolutely, yeah. So as things come up over the course of the of this, before we hop into the Q&A portion, you can find the questions tab over in the GoToWebinar toolbar. Just type it right in there, press send, and that will come through to us, and we'll hold on to those and phrase those out to either Matt or myself as we get to the Q&A later on. Before we do, so what is HeadFirst? At HeadFirst, we offer a showcase platform for high-achieving, academically focused student athletes to efficiently target the right college programs for them at the next level. Key words in this: the high-achieving, academically focused student athletes. So student athletes who are as focused on the academic side of the college process as the softball athletic side of the process. And then again, efficiently targeting the right colleges for them, not just looking for exposure to any old schools or any school that might be able to offer softball, but really focusing in on the types of schools that offer the right academic programs and the right academic match to really make sure that you are getting the most out of your college experience, both athletically and also academically. We work to accomplish this through these 3 pieces that you see down there below, offering unparalleled access directly to college coaches. So they're not just watching you through the chain link, they're in the dugouts, they're on the field with you, giving you a chance to have these direct interactions with them and really get to know you as a student athlete. Second, insight and guidance with Q&As like this one, as well as the content that we deliver on site to help families like yours and student athletes like you navigate this high academic recruiting process. Because quite honestly, this high academic recruiting process, putting together the academics and the athletics, is more difficult than just doing one or the other as you pursue your college match. It's harder than just playing softball. It's harder than just doing the classroom at the next level. Putting these 2 things together requires a very unique process, and we're here to offer some insight and expertise on how to navigate this process. And a lot of that comes from that 3rd bullet point you see there, our experience. We're now in our 21st year of running HeadFirst honor roll camps and have delivered a lot of results to a lot of student athletes. And that's 21 years of learning and feedback and conversations with coaches and families like yours. And we've used this experience to really learn for ourselves how to best help our families navigate this unique challenges of this process. How we can help. So as I mentioned, a really key piece of our platform is delivering efficient, guaranteed exposure to the right list of targeted schools and allowing and facilitating direct engagement with these college coaches. So putting a lot of high academic programs all in a field that offer great academic as well as athletic experiences, and then allowing coaches to directly interface with student athletes to not only get to see them play and get a sense of their standardized test scores and GPAs and academic areas of interest, but who they are as a student athlete, because these coaches ultimately, especially at these sorts of programs, are really recruiting the character and the culture of their team just as much as they're recruiting the on-field skills. And we believe that giving that, facilitating that direct engagement is crucial to help coaches make the right recruiting decisions and to help student athletes access that dream at the next level as well.
And those 2 points are certainly key. And I want to touch on kind of 2 more that are here. So we also are offering, a platform to advance your recruiting and discover what new schools are out there that you may not know really exist or may be looking for someone like you. Also, you mentioned this before, but is our experience. So yes, this is our 21st year running these camps. We certainly, on the operational side, know how to get it right. But we also have a really deep bench of experience of folks who did this. A lot of them were honor roll campers themselves, former college athletes, former coaches that now work for HeadFirst and that are running the event. So it gives the kids and the families a really nice opportunity to be able to lean on that. And the last part here is, results. We want to make sure you guys understand that, we've been able to deliver really nice results for student athletes and for their families to be able to get seen, open up the umbrella, go find new schools, but in the end, go out there and get signed. And I think that's ultimately, what this is about, is finding the right fit that's going to be best for you on the academic side, but also certainly on the softball side. And you'll see here, on the right-hand side of the slide, some of the schools that we're really proud of our kids that have come through our event and now they're off playing. We follow them. We make them a nice little baseball card here, which is pretty cool. But it's a really unique list here, from A to Z, which we'll kind of get to. So in terms of our events, we've run 4 already. One was in the West Coast, where we ran 2 back-to-back sessions in Chino Hills. Then we were on Long Island for 2 sessions. And we have 1 more remaining, which is what we're talking about here tonight, which is our Orlando, Florida camp. So it's going to be that second weekend in November, the 9th and 10th. They are 2-day events. And this is really a great time, which we're going to spend a whole lot talking about for our 2021 grad years to be able to get out there in front of these schools, kind of get a jump on next summer.
Absolutely, yeah. And you see here a list of the schools just some of the schools, I should say, that will be in attendance at that camp. And going back to Matt's point about this being a unique discovery platform to learn more about, sure, the schools that you already know of and that are already on your list from a from a softball as well as an academic perspective, but also brand new schools that you might have never heard of. You might have never heard of Rhodes, but you knew that Emory might offer a really good opportunity. Well, guess what? A lot of these schools look somewhat alike in the sense that you can have a really strong interest in one of them and learn about one that might not have been in your radar, but that it turns out offers a really unique and a really fitting experience. So what you see here is a wide variety of different schools: Division I, Division III, California, New England, the Southeast, really all across the country, all across the Division I, II, and III landscape. And the unifying factor behind all of them, obviously, being that they are all really, really incredible academic institutions that offer a really, really cool academic and athletics experience at the next level, with it being a wide variety of different programs.
And with it being that discovery, for a 2021, you may still be on the fence. Like, am I a D1 player? Am I a D3 player? Am I am I a player that can really play at a very high level at a Georgetown, for example, or is it more going to be at a high level but at a smaller D1? Those are really good questions to be able to actually get some answers to at an event like ours, where you're going to be exposed to all different types of schools.
Certainly. And now we're going to roll straight into that Q&A portion to really make sure that we dedicate the bulk of the evening to that. As I mentioned before, to send in your question, you can just type it right there in the questions tab, hit send. We're going to do our best to respond to all of them now, either one-off via chat in the GoToWebinar function, or more likely out loud on the Q&A. As we do that, and as we see some of those questions start to flow in, You see here, as Matt mentioned, we're really proud of the alumni network that we have playing at the next level. This 171 number is the number of softball players that this past spring of 2019, were on rosters at our partner schools. And you see there again that list over on the right-hand side of your screen. This is where these 171 student athletes were playing. Here are some of their roster headshots. We're really, really proud of what these alumni continue to do, the way that they have achieved and accessed their dreams, and honestly, what they are looking at beyond college as well, because that's a really important piece of the college experience, obviously, is not just where do I get to go play softball and get a great education, but what do I do after that 4 years is over as well? So we're really excited to highlight them and to continue to follow them.
Yeah, as well as, you can see that wide variety of schools that are on here. And we did a webinar earlier this year talking about the right college fit for you. And I think what's important when you look at this list, there's a lot of schools that don't really look alike when it comes to their majors, what that is that you're able to study, as well as where they are in the country, warm, cold, city, rural. So I think you're going to find, again, that variety is there for you to be able to say, well, I know I want to be in the city and I want a small school. Okay, well, let's go find what those schools are going to look like, and a lot of them will be at HeadFirst and vice versa. So get right into the questions. So.
Absolutely, yeah. And a couple have come in already. We also have some from Instagram from earlier today, from our Instagram story where we asked for some questions. Matt, how can I tell if a coach is interested in recruiting me as a student athlete? I'm really interested in X school. How can I tell if that coach is interested in me?
I love that question. It can be very simple. Number one, you got to ask. You got to talk to coaches. You got to put yourself in a position where you can ask those. It's an uncomfortable question saying, hey, do you like me? Right? Like no one wants to have that conversation in life anywhere. But I think it's really important where you only have such a certain amount of time to be able to be in front of these schools, and you don't want to be wasting all of your time in front of the wrong school. So I think being able to put together a really nice profile, to be able to send over to a coach, being able to go to an event like a HeadFirst, to be able to talk with them, and flat out say, hey, coach, I know you saw me play the last couple of days. I know this is an uncomfortable question, maybe. I've got to break the ice a little bit, but say, do I have the ability, do I have the intangibles to be able to play at a level of a school like yours, or not? I'm just trying to kind of navigate through. Again, really tough for, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids to be able to ask, but that's really important to be able to find out if that's the right fit.
Absolutely, and that asking and that proactivity is so key, because if you sit back and we can talk about kind of other ways to gauge that interest, but I really want to double down on this fact that you really need to ask. Now, as a 2021, understand that for coaches, a very, very valid answer to this is, I don't know if I like you yet, or I don't know where you fall in our recruiting puzzle yet, because for them, all these schools are very early in their 2021 recruiting calendars. Just 2.5 weeks ago, they were able to start making phone calls to 2021s, these Division I schools. Now, guess what? I bet that very few of these schools, even the Division Is, made a whole lot of those phone calls because of what we term the high academic slowdown. They are, their hands are a little bit more tied from an academic standpoint to be able to, they are less able to reach out to a 2021 that they saw who they really liked, because that player might not end up being the right fit for them. They might need to see the first semester of grades come through for their junior year in their transcript before they're really able and comfortable going over to their admissions department and saying, here's an admissions file for one of my recruits. I'd love to pass it along. So oftentimes the earliest that even these Division I schools will start to make decisions and make official offers to these to student athletes is in the January, February range, after that fifth semester of high school grades comes through, or even more likely at the end of this school year as well. So they have a full year, a full another year of grades and a full 3 years of total transcript that they can walk over to their admissions office. Now, a key piece of this is you want to be on the list for these schools that they are recruiting. So in January or February, if you have that really strong transcript, you want to be one of those early offers. In next June, when you get your final transcript for your junior year, you want to be on that list. So the benefit for all of you that are on this is that you are really thinking about this at the right time. And getting yourselves on these coaches' radars right now can really deliver dividends later on, because you're going to be on those lists. If they've seen you play, you are able to be one of those early recruits for them when those grades do come in. Now, understand that when you ask a coach at camp in November, let's say, you say, "Hey, Coach Wood, I'm really interested in Harvard. Are you interested in me?" She might say yes. She might say no. Or she might say, "I don't know yet, because I've seen 1 or 2 camps of 2021 student athletes, and I'm going to see a lot more before I really start to solidify who's high on my list." So it's important to understand that at this point, that answer might be "I don't know," and that "I don't know" or "not yet" is a very valid response because of where you are in this process. But also understand that putting yourselves on those radars now really can help deliver results later on. Now, the other thing that I'll say is, beyond asking directly, which is the most guaranteed and the most important way to get this feedback from coaches, there are other ways to kind of see if they are interested in you as well. There are personal pieces of personal outreach that if you get the email that went out to everybody that says, "Hey, we'd love to see you on campus," that might be legitimate interest. They might be interested in you as a recruit, or they might not. But if you are getting texts, phone calls, personal emails, other personal points of contact from these coaches, guess what? They are interested in you. So it doesn't mean that, getting a text from Lacey Wood at Harvard doesn't mean that you are one of their top recruits necessarily, but it does mean that they are interested in recruiting you. So understanding that, being able to read some of those tea leaves and saying, okay, personal outreach, good, denotes some interest, but not having that doesn't mean that I'm dead in the water, and kind of being able to read some of those tea leaves. Again, really important that you go and ask these coaches where you might stand or what your next steps are in the recruiting process. Next up is the flip side of this, Matt. How do I show a school that I'm interested in their program? Do I kind of beat around the bush and be coy? How do I show Jessica Johnson from Amherst that I'm interested in going there?
So I think being direct is always the best way to be able to do that, right? As a 2021 now, you kind of are starting to hold the keys a little bit, whereas before, they couldn't talk to you necessarily about, having high recruiting conversations, things like that. So, I think it's nice to be able to send an email to a coach, to be able, and we talk about this all the time, write in there, "Dear Coach Johnson," make sure you're getting her name, the spelling right, making sure you're putting the right name in there. And then below that, listing out a couple of really nice facts about the school, maybe a personal interest in the school. Hey, my brother went to the school. My cousin went to the school. I came and I saw a softball game last year. Being able to mention something like that, and why you're interested in the school. Not just, "I'm interested in Amherst, are you interested in me?" So show that you actually have a like for it, and then being able to put a little bit about yourself as to why you would be a good fit. Those are all really good things on paper. And then when you're at camp, being able to come up with 2, 3, 4 questions to maybe practice before you get to camp, because this is intimidating for anybody. It's really intimidating for 15, 16, 17-year-old high school kids to be able to talk about this stuff. And that's where mom and dad really can come into play and say, let's type out some of these questions, practice them, talk a little bit more about the school, about who you are as a student athlete, and be able to have some quick hitters there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that practicing that script and kind of doing a dry run, honestly, doing some practice conversations can really help, because the first time you walk up to a college coach at your dream school, it's going to be intimidating. You're going to get the clammy hands. You're going to have the butterflies in your stomach, but that's a good thing. When you're nervous about something, it means that it matters. And that's a really important piece to recognize, and practicing that can help you minimize that, and having a bit of a script. Now, I'll also say that in addition to personalizing every touch point, it's also a matter of spreading out how you reach out to these coaches. Email, because it's so convenient, because it's free, because it's easy, is going to be the bulk of your communication back and forth with coaches. Email will serve a really, really important piece of this communication. But also mix up how you're reaching out to coaches. If you come to Honor Roll and you have a great conversation with Coach Kamak from University of Chicago, guess what? You should send her a follow-up handwritten note. That really stands out. And it used to be that all of our physical inboxes were just hammered with mail, and that was kind of the busy channel to reach out on, and email was pretty sparse. Now it's completely done a 180, and these coaches' inboxes are filled with, honestly, with outreaches from recruits that might look a lot like you. And so it's a bit about marketing yourself and how do I stand out to these college coaches. One, as Matt mentioned, is personalizing every touch point, using your research and having done your homework to know about the school and the coach you're reaching out to is one really good way. But also taking time to put pen to paper and put a stamp on something and put it in the mail, that shows that coach a lot of interest beyond just firing away a form email. That also shows interest, but less so. And so mixing up the channels that you use, texting a coach if they've texted you when it's appropriate, calling a coach, emailing a coach, certainly, sending them a handwritten letter, being on campus and touching base with them in person, being at Honor Roll and touching base with them in person. Using these different forms of communication is another really good way to show this legitimate interest, in addition to doing your research and personalizing every single one of these touch points. Matt, does signing up for prospect camps, and I'm taking this to mean both a camp like Honor Roll, but also the on-campus individual school prospect camps, which you can kind of give an outline to. Does that help speed up the recruiting process at these schools? We kind of mentioned that there's a little bit different timeline for these high academic schools. Does this help speed this up if they meet a coach at a camp like ours?
So I don't think it's necessarily going to speed it up, but what it does is it gets you on the radar so when the time is right, all they have to do is kind of plug and play, right? SAT scores, which we are going to talk about. That's another question that's on there. Some of your final grades. It is so key. These coaches have been looking at you. Now is the time where they're really going to be able to say, okay, talent-wise, does this kid have the ability to play? So if you can see a coach, or they can see you in a smaller setting, i.e. a HeadFirst camp, or maybe one of their own prospect camps, it is going to significantly help you. Now, the ability of being able to perform in the classroom as well as on the field, that I can't guarantee if I haven't seen you play. But I think that's what's really, really important. If you think you have the ability, which is why you guys are on this webinar in the first place, and you know you're getting it done in the classroom, then being able to pick out a few really good camps will really help your chances of achieving this. That's why we look at some of our numbers, and we look at some of the things that the college coaches say. And I think there's a difference between the two, but they're both extremely helpful in getting that done.
Absolutely. And I think that a really important piece about the timeline is, yes, this timeline for these high academic schools does move a little bit later than, say, an Oklahoma, just by the virtue of kind of what these admissions requirements and what these admissions departments are looking for. But a really important piece is, when it is time for these schools to make a decision, you want to make sure that they have everything that they need about you to make that decision. So in order to be one of the early wrapped up recruits at an Ivy League school, or at Georgetown, or at a NESCAC school, they need to have all of your information against their timeline. So this fall, it's a really important time to make sure that they have an updated video, that they've seen you play, that they have your updated test scores, and that honestly, beyond all that, yes, they need to know how you perform in the classroom. They need to know how you perform in the field. They also need to know who you are as a student athlete. And so in order to be one of those early commitments, they need to know by January if you're the right fit. Do you have what it takes on the field? Do you have what it takes from a transcript and a standardized test perspective? And do you have the character and the culture that they're looking for? Whether that's a commitment in January or a commitment in June or July or August of next year, it's about being ready to be ready, is kind of the way that I think about it. You can't guarantee that, just because you're ready to commit to a school because it's your dream school doesn't mean that school is necessarily ready to commit to you. But you want to make sure that all your ducks are in a row so that when they are ready to commit, they can make that commitment to you very comfortably. They have the tools they need.
So what I'm hearing is that if a coach doesn't necessarily right after camp say, I want you to commit to my school, here's an offer, here's my verbal to you, not to freak out, so that's okay. But getting out there, especially in the fall time and going to some prospect camps and doing things like that, is significantly going to put you in a better spot. So when the time is right, now you're not completely stressed about rushing to every little camp and making sure they see you. And the last part is that they're going to be able to see, hey, this is how you were in a camp in the fall, and now I get to see how you've progressed, certainly as a student, but then as an athlete as well. Is that pretty much kind of those three buckets right there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that setting yourself up for success now with in every way that you can, having coaches get to know you as a player and get to know you as a person, while your academics just shake out over the natural course of time with another semester or two of grades, standardized test scores coming in, that will really help set you up for some good success early in the process relative to these schools. Another question that's come in is we kind of mentioned personal points of contact with coaches is really important. How do I start to solicit these personal points of contact? How do I make sure that I am the one sending, that my points of contact with Coach Jessica Johnson at Amherst are the ones that are on her radar? How do I do that?
That's a tough, very, very tough question. So number one is coaches need to be interested in you. Let's not, forget about that part. I think it's important. And I think it's important where, you can kind of do what you need to in terms of those different points of communication that you talked about. Because a lot of people now just stick with email, or maybe they have a profile and they can press the send button. But it is showing that you need to hit them in different ways. So being able to pick up the phone and call that coach, followed by an email, going to a camp, seeing them face to face, setting an appointment even, right? If you're at an honor camp, I use that because we've been to many, obviously. Being able to say, Coach, I'm really interested in you, in your school. They may say something similar back to you. You see them early on day one in the morning. You may see them on your field for a game. Then you see them again at a game the next day with our camps. Being able to go up to them before you leave and say, Coach, it was a real pleasure being able to play in front of you. I learned a little bit about your school. Is it okay if I follow up with you with a call in 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Maybe that coach says to you, you know what, let's reconnect in February, or let's reconnect after my season. And then you're able to now reference that and you can play off of that. It's kind of like the sale, a whole sales kind of game between back and forth. And you better believe that if a coach is interested, they'll find you, but you need to be proactive. And I think those are some things. But sitting on the sideline and just sending an email is not going to get it done, unfortunately, because of the fact that they need to know who you are as a player. They need to know who you are as a student, but more importantly, and you said this, you need to know who you are as a person to be the right fit for their camp.
Absolutely. And what I always say is the way to, you can go to a big tournament, you can go to even a showcase like ours. And if you're the right type of player, yes, you might get noticed. But guess what? The way to guarantee that you are on the right coaches' lists is to put yourself on that list. It's to reach out to coaches proactively. And really a key word for this entire process, especially at these high academic schools that, don't have the recruiting budget of an Arkansas or of an Oklahoma, and don't have the recruiting pull and admissions in the same way that a national champion softball program does. It's really important to attack this entire process proactively, which leads us right into the next question, which is, when should I start reaching out to coaches? And the answer to that for 2021s is, why not right now?
2 weeks ago.
I mean, yeah. So as of 2.5 weeks ago, coaches could legitimately get back in touch with you, a 2021, with more than just I can't talk to you because you're 2021. I'm excited. I would love to see you at our prospect camps. Now they can send more than that. And so putting yourselves on these coaches' radars right now via email and with some of these other forms of communication is really important. But the other piece is you need to have a reason to be reaching out to them. And this is where this in-person exposure at a camp, at a single school prospect camp, if it's the only school that's on your list, or at a camp like ours, is a really important piece. Because yes, you can send a coach an email, you can send them a handwritten note, you can send them a text or a tweet or an email, whatever it is, over the next couple months. But if they don't have a chance to see you play or know who you are as a player or know who you are as a person, then that communication by itself isn't going to move your process forward in the same way that getting great guaranteed exposure to them in that same time frame is. Now, the other thing is you want to reach out to these coaches, you want to be proactive, but you also want to stop short of pestering them. And what I always say is, in reaching out to schools, you have to have a reason for contacting them. It's not just, hey, Coach Gabriel from McAllister, I promised that I'd email you every Tuesday, and it's Tuesday, so I'm going to email you, because that's going to become a burden in their inbox. That's going to fill up their inbox more than they want. But if you're about to see them at a camp like Honor Roll, reach out, send them a note saying, I'm excited to see you. If you're about to be on their campus, send them a note. If you have an updated transcript, send that to them. If you have an updated test score or video or any, academic metrics or objective measurements from your softball, whatever it is, use those updates and that updated information as an excuse to contact them as you reach out to them.
And the last point here, just to kind of wrap Honor Roll in here a little bit, is what we found, because we know from the experience of what we see from our families, is this time of the year, for 2021 specifically, is the best. It is incredible for the 21s and even some of the 22s a little bit to be able to get ahead of next summer. So the number one thing we could tell you is if you are the right fit for an Honor Roll event and these schools that come out to our event are the right fit, this is single-handedly will be one of the better decisions that you make going into your full school year and entering into the spring, because of the fact that you're going to get a ton of reps. It's a smaller event. You get to go and be interacting with these schools for 2 full days, but then you get to go into the next 6 months and have a lot of reasons for the contact, as you said. So that's why we really get excited about this November event, besides us getting to go to Orlando in November. Is not such a bad thing from us in DC.
Next question that came in is a really good one, very unique to the high academic space. So Ivy League, this says, the Ivy League schools are known for focusing on need-based scholarships. Can you describe the landscape of non-need-based scholarships at high academic schools? This is an excellent question. All of the Division III schools, Division III NCAA schools, are not able to give athletic scholarships. The Ivy League, Division I, but also is precluded from giving athletic scholarships. The Ivy League and a lot of these other schools that you see here have also made the decision that they are not giving academic merit-based scholarships either. Again, it varies from school to school, but the Ivies do not give athletic money and they do not give academic money. All of their applicants are very smart and very well qualified. So what they have done is they have shifted all of the money in the Ivy League. All the money is focused on need-based financial aid to make up some really generous packages for qualifying families. Now, this does not mean that across the board there is no merit-based money available, but it does mean that a lot of these schools, there's no scholarship money and there is little academic money available because they've funneled their resources into the need-based scholarships, the need-based financial aid. Now, the best person to ask about this, though, is also the coach at these different programs.
Which is also a great question to ask when you're on the field with them.
Absolutely. As you work down the funnel with these schools, you've demonstrated interest in their program, you've received interest back from their coaches, you've been on campus, you've spoken to them face-to-face. They have a good sense of who you are and they are ready to start moving forward with you as one of their recruited student athletes. It's a really fair question to say, hey, coach, are there any piles of money sitting around for a student athlete that looks like me? And for some of them, the answer is going to be no. For the Ivy Leagues, the answer is going to be no. It's because they've decided to dedicate all to need-based financial aid. Now, what I'll say there is because of that, they're also very, very generous. The threshold for receiving aid is higher than a lot of families often think it is, so it's certainly worth asking. And the packages that a lot of families receive are more generous than they are at a lot of other schools, certainly, and more generous than a lot of families think they're going to be. But it might be that at NYU or at Brandeis or at Case Western, there are piles of scholarship money that are specifically dedicated for X type of student, somebody who is a classical musician or somebody who is focused on, Amnesty International at their high school or Model UN or whatever the case is. Some of these have pretty focused scholarship opportunities that coaches are going to be able to put you in touch with, or if not put you in touch with directly, they can point you to somebody in the financial aid and scholarship office who might be able to point you in a more knowing direction as well.
And they do this often, and I think that's important to be able to ask, and even do some research. What percentage of college athletes at some of these schools are on financial aid? You're going to find that it is a lot, and that's really what a coach is able to do is say, hey, let's try to get creative here with the different packages that are out there. But really good question, because these schools are expensive, but they're incredible education. and there's opportunities, this is where softball can be that vehicle to help you get there, and we'd love to be able to do it for you and help you.
Absolutely. Now, I also will say that there are a handful of, just kind of spinning back to this list of schools, there also are scholarship schools on this list as well. I mean, Georgetown gives scholarships, UVA gives scholarships, Lafayette gives scholarships. There are schools at our programs that do give scholarship money for softball as well as for the academic side of things. It just does vary by the school, and the trend, especially in the high academic side of things, has been to push a lot of the endowment resources and the financial resources towards that need-based financial aid. That's the push that they've made. So especially in the Ivy League and the NESCAC, but it is unique at each different school certainly as well. I think we have one more question, Matt, and then I want to make sure we're respecting everybody's time. So we're gonna get out of here. But we've talked about kind of this complete academic picture that coaches need to be able to recruit. We've talked about transcript and SAT score, ACT score, this the elephant in the room, the standardized testing. What is the balance between these two things in coaches' recruiting picture? How do I kind of balance the ACT, SAT, SAT2, PSAT, that whole world, the Kaplan, the Princeton Review world, with me busting my tail day in, day out in the classroom and working towards this transcript? What do those mean to coaches and to admissions departments?
Every school may be a little bit different when it comes to that. And I think it's important, again, I go back to this, but asking a coach, what is the average SAT score? That's kind of a loaded question, but saying, what typically are the kids that you're recruiting? Where do they sit with their ACT? That's a good one because it can give you a range. So at least okay, I'm 10 points out of range. This is not the right fit for me. Typically that's not going to happen because, of the types of schools that are going to be out there. But I think it's important to be able to ask them. But SATs and ACTs, are extremely important. It's a way to measure in a lot of ways kind of where these kids are going to fall. But the beauty is there's a lot of kids, me included, that were not great test takers. And there's a lot of test optional schools and other ways to be able to kind of go about this. And I think, again, that's why being able to ask these coaches where they stand in terms of their range is important. So that way you guys have a target goal to be able to take to potentially a SAT or an ACT class or a tutor and say, this is the goal of what I need to be for softball.
Absolutely. And I think that, admissions departments and college coaches all very much understand that this one number out of, this 31 or this 1330, whatever it is, this number out of 1600 points to a very discrete performance. And it's not the best that Susie is, and it's not everything that she is as a student athlete, but it was her performance over the course of a few hours on one given Saturday in a high school gym or a high school auditorium. And they understand that it's a very incomplete picture of who you are as a student athlete, which is why, as Matt pointed to, a lot of high academic schools, especially in the Northeast, a lot of NESCAC schools are moving to being a test optional model. A lot of really, really great schools are test flexible or test optional schools that can really open a lot of doors for students who are tremendous and they work their tail off in the classroom and they have a sparkling transcript, but when that test comes around, they freeze up. It offers some really good opportunities at some great academic institutions for that. Now, the reason that some coaches do focus on this, and that's a question that they might ask earlier on in the process for some of these schools, is that a 3.9 coming out of school A might mean something very different with a different transcript, with a different course load, and coming out of a different high school than a 3.9 coming out of school B. Same number, same GPA, but an admissions department might read those two things very differently, given what are the courses that are offered at that high school? What was the course load that the student took? Where do they sit in the class rank? All these different pieces make reading a transcript a very nuanced thing for these admissions departments. It's something that they are very good at, but it's something that college coaches have less insight into when they are looking just first blush at a student athlete they're recruiting. So where standardized tests play in kind of the coach's perspective is it is just that. It's a standardized test, and a 1420 is always a 1420 is always a 1420, and a 31 is always a 31. So it gives them a pretty clear benchmark academically of where you might fall, which is why they might ask for it earlier on, because it gives them a clear sense of where you might sit. It is by no means a complete picture. And if you have a 29, it does not mean that you are off the board. If you have a 26, it doesn't mean that you're off the board. If you have a 1200, it doesn't mean that you're off the board. We see student athletes with all sorts of standardized test scores and GPAs get recruited to all these schools each and every year, because each admissions department and each coach is looking for something a little bit different, and they weight all these different factors differently. But also, as a junior, you have a lot of development to do as well. And that early test score leaves a lot of room for improvement. No matter what your score is, there's a lot of room for development on that. So staying in touch with these coaches and getting a sense of what they are looking for is really important. As Matt mentioned, communicating with them directly, all those updated test scores give you an excuse to reach out to them as well. And again, it's not a complete picture or this judgment on you as a human being. It's one Saturday afternoon, sitting in a high school auditorium. How'd you do? And coaches and admissions departments certainly know that.
However, if you do have you have a good score, and I'm not saying you're perfect, but for being a 2021 and you took the test already and you have a really nice kind of baseline there, tell them. That's important. Those are really good things that coaches will also be able to say, okay, that's helpful for me to understand. That's just another piece of the puzzle. So I think that's important to know.
Excellent point, Matt. And on the flip side of that, not having a test score is also not a reason to get on these coaches' radars. We hear from a lot of families, and this isn't a question that came up tonight, but it's come up certainly in the past. I don't have an SAT or an ACT score. Is it too early for me to come to camp? And the answer is certainly not. In fact, there's a lot of huge benefits to being pre-test, as we call it. If you don't have a standardized test score and you raise some eyebrows in the field and you have a great GPA, well, guess what? Those schools might be a little bit more patient with you if the first time you take the SAT or ACT, it comes in a little bit lower than what they expected. They might say, all right, I really, really like you. They didn't cross you off their list because of a test score, because you didn't have one. Now you're coming in and saying, Coach, I got a 29. I know we talked about a 31 on the ACT, but I think I can get there. They can be more patient. So if you get on coaches' radars early and before you have a test, you can really keep some of these doors open longer. And there's actually a huge benefit to coming before you have some of these standardized test scores. Even if they are something that you might need, if you're not looking at only test optional schools, you can still really get on a lot of radars early with them. Awesome. I want to make sure we're respecting everybody's time, and I know we're already a couple minutes over. So thank you all so much for joining us. Again, not the only opportunity that you'll have to get your questions answered. You see there on the screen, here's our email, our phone number. Our blog has some great resources about the recruiting process as well. You can always pop on our website and send us a live chat. We have a little chat function there that Matt and myself or our colleague Austin often answers. Feel free to ping us there with any questions that you have, and we certainly hope to see you later on down the line. Thank you for taking the time this evening, and we wish you the best of luck in your recruiting.
Thank you very much, guys.